The doorbell chimed, shattering the fragile peace I'd managed to cultivate in our home. I froze, spatula in hand, a half-flipped pancake sizzling on the griddle. It was too early for visitors, especially on a Saturday morning. "I'll get it," Kevin called from the living room, his footsteps padding towards the front door. I turned back to the stove, trying to shake off the sudden unease that gripped me. As I slid the slightly burnt pancake onto a plate, I heard a familiar voice that made my blood run cold. "Kevin, darling, surprise!" Beatrice, my mother-in-law, the last person I wanted to see on what was supposed to be a quiet weekend with my husband. I took a deep breath, plastered on a smile, and walked into the living room. There she stood, all perfectly coiffed hair and designer clothes, embracing Kevin as if she hadn't seen him in years. It had been 3 months. "Lisa," Beatrice said, her eyes narrowing as she spotted me. "I hope I'm not interrupting anything." "Not at all," I lied, my fingers tightening around the spatula. "We were just having breakfast. Would you like to join us?" Kevin shot me a grateful look, but I could see the tension in his shoulders. He knew how difficult things were between his mother and me. "That would be lovely," Beatrice said, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. "I'm famished after my flight." As we settled around the kitchen table, I couldn't help but notice how Beatrice dominated the conversation, peppering Kevin with questions about work and his social life. I might as well have been invisible. "So, any news on the baby front?" Beatrice asked suddenly, her gaze zeroing in on me. I felt my cheeks flush. "We're still trying," I managed, avoiding Kevin's eyes. Beatrice clicked her tongue. "Well, you're not getting any younger, dear. Maybe you should see a specialist." "Mom," Kevin warned, but Beatrice waved him off. "I'm just concerned," she said, reaching across the table to pat my hand. "After all, I want grandchildren while I'm still young enough to enjoy them." I pulled my hand away, anger bubbling up inside me. "We'll have children when we're ready, Beatrice. It's not a race." "Of course not," she said, her tone dripping with condescension. "I just hope you're not putting your career ahead of starting a family. That would be selfish, don't you think?" "That's enough," Kevin said firmly, standing up. "Mom, why don't we go for a walk? I'll show you the new garden Lisa's been working on." As they left, I slumped in my chair, fighting back tears. This was supposed to be our home, our safe haven. But with Beatrice here, it felt like a battlefield. I was clearing the dishes when they returned, Beatrice's voice drifting in from the hallway. "And really, Kevin, you should think about redecorating. This place could use a woman's touch." I gritted my teeth, resisting the urge to throw a plate across the room. Instead, I marched into the living room, where Beatrice was critically eyeing our family photos. "I decorated this house," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "Kevin and I chose everything together." Beatrice turned, her eyebrows raised. "Oh? Well, I suppose everyone has different tastes. I just thought, since I'll be staying for a while, we could make some changes." I blinked, feeling as if the floor had dropped out from under me. "Staying? For how long?" "Well," Beatrice said, settling herself on our couch like a queen on her throne. "Since your father left me, Kevin, I thought I'd come and spend some quality time with my son, and his wife, of course," she added, almost as an afterthought. I looked at Kevin, silently pleading with him to say something, anything. But he just stood there looking uncomfortable and conflicted. I need some air," I muttered, grabbing my keys and heading for the door. As I stepped outside, I heard Beatrice's voice floating after me. "My goodness, Kevin, is she always this dramatic?" I slammed the door behind me, my hands shaking as I fumbled with my car keys. This was supposed to be my home, my life. But with Beatrice here, I felt like an outsider in my own house. As I drove away, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning of a long, difficult battle, and I wasn't sure I had the strength to fight it. I stared at the little plastic stick in my trembling hands, hardly daring to believe what I was seeing. 2 pink lines. After months of disappointment and heartache, it was finally happening. I was pregnant. "Kevin," I called out, my voice cracking with emotion. "Kevin, come here." He appeared in the doorway, his face etched with concern. "Lisa, what's wrong?" I held up the test, tears of joy streaming down my face. "We're having a baby." For a moment, Kevin just stood there, frozen. Then his face broke into a wide grin, and he swept me up in his arms, spinning me around the bathroom. "We're having a baby!" he shouted, laughing. "Oh my God, Lisa, we're going to be parents!" As he set me down, I caught sight of Beatrice hovering in the hallway, her expression unreadable. My heart sank a little, but I refused to let her dampen this moment. "Congratulations," she said, her voice cool. "I suppose I'll be a grandmother after all." Kevin either didn't notice her tone or chose to ignore it. "Isn't it wonderful, Mom? You're going to be a grandma." Beatrice's lips tightened into a thin smile. "Yes, wonderful. I just hope you two are prepared for the responsibility. Children are a handful, you know." I bit back a retort, determined not to let her ruin this for us. "We'll manage just fine, Beatrice. We've been wanting this for a long time." "Of course you have," she said, patting my arm condescendingly. "Well, I suppose we'll need to start planning the nursery. I have some ideas." "Actually," I interrupted, "Kevin and I would like to do that ourselves. It's our first child, after all." Beatrice's eyes narrowed. "I see. Well, I'm sure you know best." As the weeks passed, my joy at the pregnancy was constantly overshadowed by Beatrice's presence. She seemed to take every opportunity to criticize and undermine me. "Are you sure you should be eating that?" she'd ask as I reached for a cookie. "You don't want to gain too much weight. Or I hope you're not planning on working once the baby comes. Children need their mothers at home." One afternoon, I was folding laundry when Beatrice cornered me in the bedroom. "Lisa, dear," she began, her voice sickly sweet, "I've been thinking, perhaps it would be best if I moved in permanently to help with the baby." I froze, a chill running down my spine. "That's very kind of you, Beatrice, but we'll be fine on our own." She laughed, a sharp, brittle sound. "Oh, you have no idea what you're in for. Trust me, you'll need the help. And who better than an experienced mother?" "I appreciate the offer," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, "but Kevin and I want to do this ourselves." Beatrice's face hardened. "I see. Well, don't come crying to me when you're overwhelmed and exhausted. I'm only trying to help." That night, I lay awake long after Kevin had fallen asleep, my hand resting on my growing belly. I should have been excited about the future, but all I felt was dread. The next morning, I woke to the sound of Beatrice's voice, shrill and angry, coming from the kitchen. I crept downstairs, pausing outside the door to listen. "I'm telling you, Kevin, she's not fit to be a mother," Beatrice was saying. "She's too selfish, too career-oriented. The baby will suffer." My heart pounded as I waited for Kevin to defend me, but his response made my blood run cold. "I know, Mom," he sighed. "I'm worried, too. Maybe you're right about moving in." I stumbled back, my hand flying to my mouth to stifle a sob. This was supposed to be the happiest time of our lives, but instead, it felt like everything was falling apart. As I stood there, tears streaming down my face, I made a decision. I couldn't bring my child into this toxic environment. I needed to get out, to find somewhere safe and nurturing for both of us. With shaking hands, I pulled out my phone and dialed my mother's number. "Mom," I whispered when she answered. "I need your help. I can't stay here anymore." The familiar scent of my mother's lavender-scented candles washed over me as I stepped into my childhood home. My parents' worried faces greeted me, and I felt a wave of relief crash over me. "Oh, sweetheart," Mom said, pulling me into a tight hug. "We're so glad you're here." Dad took my suitcase, his brow furrowed with concern. "Are you sure about this, Lisa? Have you really thought it through?" I nodded, my hand instinctively moving to my swollen belly. "I can't stay there anymore, Dad. It's not good for me or the baby." As we settled in the living room, I recounted the past few months, Beatrice's constant criticism, Kevin's increasing distance, and the suffocating atmosphere that had taken over our home. "I just don't understand," Mom said, shaking her head. "How could Kevin let his mother treat you like that?" I sighed, feeling the weight of disappointment settle on my shoulders. He's always been close to her, but lately, it's like he can't see how toxic she is. Dad leaned forward, his eyes serious. "Lisa, you know you can stay here as long as you need. We'll help you figure this out." Tears welled up in my eyes. "Thanks, Dad. I don't know what to do next." The weeks that followed were a stark contrast to the tension-filled days at my own home. Mom fussed over me, making sure I ate well and rested. Dad spent hours assembling a crib in the spare room, whistling as he worked. But the peace was shattered one afternoon when my phone rang, Kevin's name flashing on the screen. "Where are you?" he demanded, his voice tight with anger. "Mom said you just left without a word." I took a deep breath, steeling myself. "I'm at my parents'. Kevin, I couldn't stay there anymore. The way your mother treats me, the way you've been acting, it's not healthy for me or the baby." There was a long pause. When Kevin spoke again, his voice was cold. "You're overreacting. Mom's just trying to help. You need to come home now." "No," I said, surprised by the firmness in my voice. "I'm staying here until we can figure this out, without your mother's interference." Kevin's response was cut off by Beatrice's shrill voice in the background. "Is that her?" Let me talk to her. Before I could protest, Beatrice was on the line. Lisa, this is ridiculous. You're upsetting Kevin and endangering your child with this selfish behavior. Come home immediately. I ended the call, my hands shaking. Mom found me a few minutes later, curled up on the bed, sobbing. Oh, honey, she soothed, stroking my hair. It's going to be okay. But as the days turned into weeks and Kevin's calls became less frequent and more hostile, I began to wonder if anything would ever be okay again. Then, on a crisp autumn morning, I felt the first contractions. Mom drove me to the hospital, her usual calm demeanor tinged with excitement. Have you called Kevin? She asked as we waited for the doctor. I shook my head, guilt and sadness warring inside me. I don't think he'd come anyway. Hours later, as I held my newborn son in my arms, I felt a surge of love and protectiveness unlike anything I'd ever experienced. Hello, James, I whispered, tracing his tiny features with my finger. I promise I'll always keep you safe. As James slept in the hospital bassinet beside me, I made a decision. I couldn't go back to that house, to the toxicity and manipulation. My son deserved better. I deserved better. With trembling fingers, I picked up my phone and dialed Kevin's number. It went straight to voicemail. Kevin, I said, my voice stronger than I felt. I've had the baby, a boy. His name is James. I'm not coming back. I can't expose our son to that environment. If you want to be part of his life, it'll have to be on different terms. As I ended the call, I felt a strange mix of sadness and relief. I had no idea what the future held, but I knew one thing for certain. I would do whatever it took to give James the loving, peaceful home he deserved. 6 months had passed since James was born, and I finally felt ready to face Kevin and reclaim my life. With my parents' encouragement and James securely strapped in his car seat, I drove back to the house I once called home. As I pulled into the driveway, my heart raced. The garden I'd lovingly tended was overgrown, and Kevin's car was nowhere in sight. Something felt off. I rang the doorbell, bouncing James gently in my arms. The door swung open, and I found myself face to face with Beatrice. Well, well, she said, her lips curling into a smirk. Look who's decided to grace us with her presence. I steeled myself, refusing to be intimidated. I'm here to see Kevin. Where is he? Beatrice's eyes narrowed. Kevin's at work, of course. Unlike some people, he takes his responsibilities seriously. I bit back a retort, reminding myself I was here for James's sake. May we come in? I'd like to wait for him. She hesitated, then stepped aside with a dramatic sigh. I suppose I can't deny a grandmother time with her grandson. As I entered, my jaw dropped. The house had been completely transformed. My carefully chosen decor was gone, replaced by Beatrice's gaudy taste. Family photos that once lined the walls had vanished, supplanted by portraits of Beatrice and Kevin. What happened here? I stammered. Beatrice's smile was triumphant. Oh, just a little redecorating. The place needed a woman's touch, you know? I felt like I'd stepped into a parallel universe. This couldn't be happening. Where are all our things? Our photos? Packed away, she said dismissively. Kevin agreed it was time for a change. I sank onto the unfamiliar couch, clutching James close. This was worse than I'd imagined. It wasn't just the house. It felt like my entire life had been erased. Hours ticked by, filled with Beatrice's thinly veiled insults and attempts to take James from me. When Kevin finally walked through the door, the look of shock on his face mirrored my own from earlier. Lisa? He said, his voice a mix of surprise and something else I couldn't quite place. What are you doing here? Before I could respond, Beatrice swooped in. Kevin, darling, look who's decided to pay us a visit, and she's brought little James. Kevin's eyes darted between us, uncertainty clear in his expression. I stood, holding James protectively. Kevin, we need to talk, I said firmly. Alone. Beatrice bristled. Anything you have to say can be said in front of me. I'm family, after all. Mom, Kevin said, his voice strained. Please, give us a moment. As Beatrice reluctantly left the room, I turned to Kevin. What's going on here? Why is your mother living in our house? And where are all our things? Kevin ran a hand through his hair, looking anywhere but at me. Lisa, things have changed. Mom needed a place to stay, and well, you weren't here. I wasn't here because I couldn't stay in this toxic environment, I exclaimed, causing James to whimper. I lowered my voice, rocking him gently. Kevin, this isn't right. We need to figure this out, for James' sake if nothing else. Kevin's face hardened. Maybe if you hadn't run away, we wouldn't be in this situation. His words hit me like a slap. Run away? I left to protect our child, Kevin. I gave you a chance to be part of his life, but you chose your mother over us. That's not fair, he protested weakly. No, what's not fair is coming home to find I've been erased from my own life, I shot back. We need to make a decision, Kevin. Right now. Are you going to be a father and a husband, or are you going to keep being your mother's son? The silence that followed was deafening. Kevin's eyes darted towards the door where Beatrice had disappeared, then back to James and me. In that moment, I saw the man I married, warring with the son Beatrice had molded. I need time to think, he finally said. I nodded, a lump forming in my throat. Fine. Think. But know this, Kevin. I won't wait forever. James and I deserve better than this. As I walked out the door, James cradled against my chest. I realized the decision might already have been made for us. The question was, did I have the strength to accept it and move forward on my own? A week after my confrontation with Kevin, I received a text message that made my blood run cold. We need to talk. Come to the house tomorrow at 10 a.m., Kevin. I spent the night tossing and turning, my mind racing with possibilities. Was Kevin finally ready to choose us over his mother, or was this the beginning of the end? The next morning, I arrived at the house with James, my heart pounding. As I walked up the driveway, I noticed Kevin's car was gone, but Beatrice's was there. A sense of dread washed over me. I rang the doorbell and Beatrice answered, her face a mask of false sympathy. Oh, Lisa, come in, dear. Kevin's just stepped out for a moment. As I entered the living room, I froze. Scattered across the coffee table were stacks of papers, legal documents. My eyes caught phrases like custody agreement and division of assets. What is this? I demanded, clutching James closer to my chest. Beatrice's smile was cold. Kevin's decided it's time to make things official. He's filing for divorce. The room spun around me. No, I whispered. He wouldn't do this without talking to me first. Oh, but he has, Beatrice said, her voice dripping with satisfaction. He's realized what's best for everyone, especially little James. At the mention of my son's name, I snapped back to reality. What do you mean? Beatrice picked up one of the documents. Kevin's seeking full custody. After all, a child needs stability and you've been, well, let's say unreliable. Rage boiled up inside me. Unreliable? I left to protect my son from this toxic environment. Where's Kevin? I need to speak with him now. As if on cue, the front door opened and Kevin walked in. His face was a mixture of guilt and determination. Lisa, he said, avoiding my eyes. I see Mom's told you about the papers. I marched up to him, James still in my arms. How could you do this, Kevin? How could you take our son away from me? Kevin's jaw clenched. It's for the best, Lisa. You're not stable enough to raise him on your own. Not stable? I nearly shouted, causing James to whimper. I lowered my voice, rocking him gently. I'm the one who's been there for him every day. I'm the one who's been protecting him from this madness. Beatrice stepped between us. Now, let's not make a scene. Kevin's made his decision. It's time for you to leave, Lisa, and leave James here where he belongs. Something inside me snapped. I took a step back, my eyes darting between Kevin and Beatrice. No, I said, my voice steady and firm. No, I won't let you do this. Kevin reached for James. Lisa, don't make this harder than it needs to be. I dodged his grasp, backing towards the door. You want to take my son? You'll have to go through me first. Beatrice's face contorted with rage. You ungrateful little... Enough, I shouted, surprising even myself with the force of my voice. I'm leaving now with my son. If you want to fight me, Kevin, we'll do it in court. But I promise you, I will not let you or your mother destroy our family without a fight. As I turned to leave, Kevin called out, his voice wavering. Lisa, please, think about what you're doing. I paused at the door, looking back at the man I once loved, now a stranger to me. I am thinking, Kevin. For the first time in years, I'm thinking clearly. And I'm choosing my son over your mother's manipulation. I'm choosing myself. With that, I walked out, slamming the door behind me. As I buckled James into his car seat, my hands shaking, I knew I had just made the most important decision of my life. The road ahead would be difficult, but I was ready to fight for what mattered most, my son and my dignity. I started the car, my resolve strengthening with each passing moment. It was time to reclaim my life, and I knew exactly where to start. I pulled out my phone and dialed a number I should have called long ago. Hello, is this the office of Johnson & Associates Family Law? I need to speak with a divorce attorney immediately. The day I filed for divorce felt like the end and the beginning of everything. My hands shook as I signed the papers, but my resolve was ironclad. As I left the lawyer's office, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders, only to be replaced by a new one, the fight that lay ahead. I wasn't prepared for Kevin's response. Instead of contesting the divorce, he agreed almost immediately. His eagerness to end our marriage cut deeper than I expected, but it was his counterproposal that truly blindsided me. He wants what? I gasped, staring at my lawyer in disbelief. She sighed, pushing the document across the desk. Mr. Thompson is requesting primary custody of James, with you having visitation rights every other weekend. The room spun around me. That's insane. I'm James's primary caregiver. I'm the one who's been there for him every day. I know, Lisa, my lawyer said gently, but Mr. Thompson is claiming that your departure from the marital home demonstrates instability. He's painting you as unstable and unreliable. Anger surged through me. Unstable. I left to protect my son from a toxic environment. How dare he twist that against me? As we strategized our response, a sickening realization dawned on me. This had Beatrice written all over it. She was orchestrating this entire charade, using Kevin as her puppet. The next few weeks were a blur of depositions, court appearances, and sleepless nights. I fought with everything I had, but it felt like swimming against a riptide. Kevin had resources I couldn't match. Beatrice's money, her connections, her ruthless determination to win at any cost. The final blow came on a rainy Tuesday morning. I sat in the courtroom, my parents on either side of me as the judge delivered his ruling. After careful consideration of all evidence presented, this court grants temporary primary custody of James Thompson to the father, Kevin Thompson, with the mother, Lisa Thompson, granted visitation every other weekend and one evening per week. The words hit me like a physical blow. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. All I could see was but Beatrice's triumphant smirk from across the courtroom. As we left the courthouse, reporters swarmed us. Beatrice, ever the opportunist, stepped forward. We're just so relieved, she said, her voice dripping with false sincerity. All we want is what's best for little James. It's such a shame his mother couldn't provide a stable environment. Something inside me snapped. I lunged forward, my fist connecting with Beatrice's jaw before I even realized what I was doing. The crowd gasped, cameras flashed, and just like that I had given them exactly what they wanted, proof of my instability. The next day, my face was plastered across local news channels. Unstable mother assaults grandmother in custody battle, the headlines screamed. I sat in my parents' living room, James clutched tightly to my chest, watching my life unravel on national television. Oh, honey, my mom said, her voice breaking, what are we going to do? I looked down at James, his innocent eyes gazing up at me, and felt a fierce primal love surge through me. In that moment, I knew I would move heaven and earth for him. We fight, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. We fight with everything we have. But as I said the words, doubt crept in. How could I fight against this? How could I prove I was a good mother when everything seemed stacked against me? As if sensing my distress, James reached up and touched my cheek. His tiny gesture of love broke something inside me. Tears streamed down my face as I held him close, wondering how I could possibly let him go. The clock on the wall ticked relentlessly, counting down the hours until I had to hand my son over to Kevin and Beatrice. With each passing minute, the weight of my situation pressed down on me, threatening to crush me entirely. I had never felt so alone, so defeated. But as I looked into James's eyes, I knew I couldn't give up. Not now, not ever. Whatever it took, I would find a way to keep my son and reclaim my life. The question was, how? The alarm blared at 5 a.m., jolting me awake. I didn't need it. I'd barely slept. Today was the day I'd start my new job, my first step towards reclaiming my life and fighting for James. As I got ready, I caught a glimpse of myself in the mirror. The woman staring back at me was a far cry from the broken shell I'd been just weeks ago. Determination blazed in my eyes. I was done being a victim. You've got this, Lisa, I whispered to my reflection. I dropped James off at my parents' house, kissing his chubby cheeks. Mommy loves you, sweetheart. I'm doing this for us. The marketing firm was a whirlwind of activity. My new boss, Sarah, was impressed by my eagerness to learn and take on extra tasks. Keep this up, she said, and you'll go far here. For the first time in months, I felt a glimmer of hope. I could do this. I could build a stable life for James and me. But my newfound confidence was shattered when I received a call from my lawyer during lunch. Lisa, we have a problem, she said, her voice tense. Kevin's filed a motion to reduce your visitation rights. He's claiming your new job interferes with James's routine. The world tilted on its axis. What? But I'm working to provide for James. How can they use that against me? I'm sorry, Lisa. Beatrice has hired a high-powered legal team. They're pulling out all the stops. I ended the call, my hands shaking. How much more could they take from me? That evening, as I picked up James from my parents, I noticed my father's worried expression. "What's wrong, Dad?" He hesitated. "Lisa, honey, there's something you should see." He handed me his tablet, open to a local news website. My heart stopped as I read the headline, "Mother in Custody Battle Accused of Neglect." The article was filled with lies and half-truths, painting me as an unfit mother who chose career over child. Beatrice's influence was clear in every word. "This can't be happening," I whispered, tears stinging my eyes. My mother wrapped her arms around me. "We'll fight this, sweetheart. We're with you all the way." But as the days passed, the situation only worsened. Rumors spread at work, co-workers whispering behind my back. Sarah called me into her office, her face grave. "Lisa, I'm sorry, but we're going to have to let you go. The negative publicity." I nodded numbly, gathering my things. Another piece of my life, gone. The final blow came a week later. I arrived at Kevin's house for my visitation, only to find Beatrice waiting for me. "I'm afraid James isn't feeling well," she said, false concern dripping from her voice. "It's best if he stays home today." "You can't do this," I said, my voice breaking. "He's my son." Beatrice's eyes hardened. "A son you abandoned. Face it, Lisa, you've lost. It's time to walk away." I stumbled back to my car, sobs racking my body. How had it come to this? I'd lost my husband, my job, and now they were trying to take my son. As I drove aimlessly, my mind raced. I couldn't give up. I wouldn't. But how could I fight against such overwhelming odds? Suddenly, a memory surfaced. Something Kevin had once mentioned about Beatrice's past, a secret she'd been desperate to keep hidden. I pulled over, my heart pounding. It was a long shot, but it might be my only chance. With trembling fingers, I dialed a number I never thought I'd call. "Hello?" A gruff voice answered. I took a deep breath. "Dennis, this is Lisa, Kevin's wife. I need your help." There was a long pause. Then, "I've been waiting for this call. It's time Beatrice faced the truth." As I hung up, a mix of hope and fear surged through me. I was about to unleash a storm that could destroy everything. But for James, I'd risk it all. Tomorrow I'd make my final stand. Win or lose, nothing would ever be the same again. The doorbell rang, shattering the tense silence in my parents' living room. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what was to come. Dennis stood beside me, a folder clutched tightly in his hands. "Are you ready?" he asked, his voice gruff but kind. I nodded, my heart pounding. "As I'll ever be." I opened the door to find Kevin and Beatrice, their faces a mix of confusion and anger. "What's the meaning of this, Lisa?" Kevin demanded. "And why is he here?" He glared at Dennis. "Please, come in," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "There's something you both need to hear." As we gathered in the living room, the tension was palpable. Beatrice's eyes darted between Dennis and me, a flicker of fear crossing her face. "Kevin," Dennis began, "there's no easy way to say this. I'm not your biological father." The room fell silent. Kevin's face drained of color. "What? That's impossible." Beatrice leapt to her feet. "How dare you? This is preposterous." But Dennis was already pulling documents from his folder. "I had a DNA test done years ago, Beatrice. I know the truth. Kevin's real father is that man you had an affair with, your boss at the time." Kevin turned to his mother, his eyes wide with disbelief. "Mom, is this true?" Beatrice's carefully constructed facade crumbled. I never meant for you to find out. I was trying to protect you." "Protect me?" Kevin's voice cracked. "By lying to me my entire life? By driving away everyone who ever cared about me?" As the truth unfolded, I watched the realization dawn on Kevin's face. Every manipulation, every lie Beatrice had told came crashing down around them. "All this time," Kevin whispered, "you've been controlling my life, my relationships. You drove Lisa away, tried to take my son from her, and it was all based on a lie?" Beatrice reached for him, but he recoiled. "Kevin, darling, everything I did was for you. I love you." "Love?" Kevin scoffed. "This isn't love, Mom. This is obsession." He turned to me, his eyes filled with remorse. "Lisa, I'm so sorry. I've been such a fool." I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. "We've all been fooled, Kevin, but it's not too late to make things right." Beatrice, seeing her control slipping away, made one last desperate attempt. "You can't believe them, Kevin. They're trying to turn you against me. I'm the only one who truly cares about you." But Kevin stood firm. "No, Mom, it's over. I want you out of my life, out of Lisa's life, and out of James's life. For good." As Beatrice's world collapsed around her, I felt no joy, only relief. The battle was over, but the scars would take time to heal. In the days that followed, Kevin and I began the slow process of rebuilding trust. We agreed to co-parent James, putting his needs first. The custody arrangement was revised, giving me equal time with my son. As I tucked James into bed one night, Kevin watching from the doorway, I realized how far we'd come. We weren't the same people who had started this journey, but perhaps we were better for it. Lisa, Kevin said softly as we left James's room, I know I have a lot to make up for, but I want you to know, I'm committed to being a better father and a better man. I smiled, feeling a glimmer of the love we once shared. One day at a time, Kevin. We'll figure it out together. As I lay in bed that night, reflecting on the tumultuous path that had led me here, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. I had faced my greatest fears, stood up to my tormentors, and emerged stronger. I thought of the woman I was at the beginning of this ordeal, scared, uncertain, and feeling powerless. Now I was resilient, confident, and in control of my own destiny. Whatever challenges lay ahead, I knew I had the strength to face them. For myself, for James, and for the family we were rebuilding. One truth, one day at a time.